It was a still, moonlit night, and the cabin's warm interior seemed like a cocoon against the quiet vastness of the forest. Sam Carter, a reclusive artist with a penchant for solitude, sat at his cluttered work table. The faint glow of a desk lamp illuminated a half-finished sketch, a twisting blend of human and cosmic forms, inspired by his fascination with the unknown. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faintest hint of rain. The knock shattered the tranquility like a stone thrown into a glass pond. Sharp, deliberate, and insistent, it echoed through the cabin. Sam froze, his pencil halting mid-stroke. He wasn't expecting anyone. No one ever came this far into the woods unless they were lost or desperate. His mind raced through possibilities, maybe a hiker in trouble? A forest ranger? He stood slowly, the chair creaking as he pushed back from the table. The knocking came again, louder this time, almost frantic. His stomach tightened with unease as he reached for the flashlight sitting on the table. With cautious steps, he approached the door, the wooden floor cool beneath his bare feet. "Who's there?" His voice was steady, but the silence that followed was unsettling. He squinted through the peephole and saw only darkness. The faint rustling of leaves filled the void, and for a fleeting moment, he wondered if it was just his imagination. But then it came again, 3 sharp knocks, each one more insistent than the last. Sam hesitated. A part of him wanted to ignore it, to retreat back into the safety of his cabin and pretend he hadn't heard anything. But another part, the one driven by curiosity, compelled him forward. He unlocked the door and cracked it open, peering into the night. His breath caught in his throat. A figure stood on his doorstep, swaying slightly as if on the verge of collapse. It was a woman, or at least she appeared to be. Her skin glowed faintly, a soft, silvery hue that shimmered like moonlight on water. Her hair was dark, almost black, and her eyes, large and almond-shaped, shone a deep, vibrant shade of violet. Her clothing, or what remained of it, clung to her slender frame, torn and stained with a dark, shimmering liquid. "Help me," she whispered, her voice trembling yet melodic, each word tinged with an otherworldly resonance. Sam's instincts screamed at him to run. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen, something out of a dream or a nightmare. But her eyes, filled with pain and desperation, anchored him in place. "Come inside," he managed to say, stepping aside. She staggered past him, her movements weak and unsteady. As she crossed the threshold, she collapsed onto the worn couch near the fireplace. Sam closed the door quickly, locking it behind him, and turned back to her. She clutched her side, and that's when he noticed the wound, a deep gash using the same strange, dark liquid that stained her suit. It wasn't blood, at least not like anything he'd seen before. "Wait here," he said, his voice firmer now as he grabbed a towel from the bathroom. He knelt beside her and pressed it gently against the wound. She winced but didn't pull away. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice low but steady. She hesitated, her gaze flickering toward the window before returning to his. "I was pursued," she said haltingly. "They want to capture me." "Who's after you?" Sam pressed, though he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. Her violet eyes locked onto his, filled with fear. "Not now," she whispered. "Please. I need to heal." Sam nodded, deciding not to push further. Her trembling hand reached for a small, metallic device clipped to her belt. "Med kit," she murmured. Sam took it, marveling at its sleek, alien design. Following her instructions, he activated the device, and a soft beam of light enveloped her wound. He watched in awe as the bleeding slowed and the torn flesh began to knit itself back together. Within moments, the wound was closed, leaving only a faint scar. She let out a shaky breath, her voice stronger now. "Thank you." Sam sat back, still clutching the medkit. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Naya," she said, her voice melodic but tinged with exhaustion. "I'm not from this world." Sam blinked, his mind struggling to process her words. "You're an alien," he said, more to himself than to her. She nodded. "My people call our home Lyraxis. I came here as an observer, to learn, but they found me." "Who are they?" Sam asked, his unease growing. Her expression darkened. "A hostile faction from the far reaches of my galaxy." They seek to exploit my technology for destruction. When they attacked my ship, I barely escaped. Sam's heart raced. The surreal nature of the situation was almost too much to bear, yet the evidence was right in front of him. Naya's glowing skin, her advanced technology, her strange but melodic voice, all of it defied explanation. "What do they want with you?" he asked. "To use me as leverage," she said grimly. "To turn Earth into another pawn in their war." A flicker of light outside the window caught Sam's attention. He stiffened, the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. "They're here," Naya said softly, her voice laced with dread. Sam's chest tightened. He glanced toward the window, then back at her. "What do we do?" Naya's gaze hardened. "We fight," she said. "But first, I need your help." The pursuers arrive. The cabin felt smaller now, its once cozy walls closing in with the weight of Naya's words. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying a faint hum, low, mechanical, and growing louder. Sam moved to the window, careful not to disturb the curtains. Peeking through the narrow slit, his breath caught. Dark figures moved among the trees. Their shapes were humanoid but unnervingly fluid, as if shadows had taken on physical form. Red lights blinked faintly where their eyes should have been, and their movements were unnaturally synchronized, like predators locked onto their prey. "They're closer than I thought," Naya said, her voice grim. She stood now, her posture steadier but still radiating exhaustion. She reached into the torn fabric of her suit and pulled out a small, metallic sphere. It shimmered faintly in the dim light. "What's that?" Sam asked, stepping back from the window. "A defensive field generator," she explained. "It will buy us time, but it won't hold them off forever." Sam's mind raced. This wasn't some abstract threat. These beings, whatever they were real, and they were coming for her. He glanced around his cabin, his sanctuary now a potential battlefield. The tools of his quiet life, paintbrushes, canvases, and a few worn books, felt absurdly inadequate against whatever was lurking in the shadows outside. "What do you need?" he asked, surprising even himself with the steadiness in his voice. Naya's violet eyes met his, and for a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of gratitude. "I need to repair my communicator. If I can send a distress signal, my people will come. Tell me what to do." She nodded, her fingers moving quickly over the surface of the metallic sphere. "I need copper wiring, a power source, batteries will do, and something to solder connections. Do you have these things?" Sam thought for a moment, then moved toward the storage cabinet in the corner. He rummaged through its contents, pulling out an old flashlight, some spare batteries, and a soldering iron he used for minor repairs around the cabin. "Will this work?" he asked, laying the items on the table. Naya inspected them quickly. "Yes. This will suffice." As she began working, her movements precise and almost mechanical, Sam couldn't help but marvel at her composure. She was clearly exhausted, and yet her hands didn't tremble. The metallic sphere in her grasp began to emit a faint hum, its surface shifting as she manipulated its inner components. "What happens if they get in?" Sam asked, his voice low. Naya paused, her gaze flickering toward the door. "We can't let that happen. If they capture me, if they take what I know," she didn't finish the sentence, but the gravity of her silence was answer enough. Suddenly, the hum outside grew louder. A sharp, piercing noise, like the screech of tearing metal, filled the air. The lights in the cabin flickered, then dimmed. Sam's heart leapt into his throat. "They're disrupting the power grid," Naya said. "They'll try to disable the field next." A loud crash echoed from the back of the cabin. Sam spun around, his adrenaline surging. The sound had come from the rear storage room, where the only other door to the cabin was located. "They're testing the perimeter," Naya said, her tone calm but urgent. "They'll find a way in if we don't stop them." Sam grabbed the heaviest object within reach, a rusty hammer from his toolkit. It felt laughably insufficient, but it was better than nothing. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Naya's eyes flicked to him, a hint of determination lighting her features. "Hold them off long enough for me to finish this. Once the communicator is active, I can call for reinforcements." Hold them off? Sam asked incredulously, gesturing toward the window. With what, exactly? She reached into a hidden compartment on her belt and pulled out a small, sleek device. It resembled a handgun but was far too smooth and futuristic to be mistaken for one. This, she said, handing it to him. Sam hesitated, turning the device over in his hands. I don't even know how to use this. Point and press the trigger, she said simply. It's calibrated to incapacitate, not kill. Another crash, this one closer. Sam flinched, his grip tightening on the alien weapon. The air outside felt charged, as though a storm was brewing, but it wasn't thunder he feared. They're coming, Naya said, her voice sharper now. You need to trust yourself. Sam took a deep breath and nodded. Let's do this. The first intruder breached the cabin moments later. The door to the storage room splintered inward, and one of the shadowy figures stepped through, its glowing red eyes fixed on Sam. Up close, the creature was even more terrifying. Its form was humanoid but blurred at the edges, as though it didn't fully exist in this dimension. Its movements were smooth yet unsettlingly alien. Sam didn't wait for it to attack. He raised the alien weapon and pressed the trigger. A beam of light shot out, striking the intruder square in the chest. The creature staggered, its form flickering before it collapsed to the ground. Another figure followed, then another. Sam fired again, each shot met with a hiss as the intruders fell. The weapon was frighteningly efficient, but the sheer number of attackers was overwhelming. Naya, he shouted, backing toward the main room. How much longer? Almost there, she called, her fingers flying over the communicator. The metallic sphere in her hands pulsed with light, its hum growing louder. Another crash came from the front door, followed by the sound of splintering wood. Sam spun around, his pulse pounding. More figures poured into the cabin, their guttural voices filling the air. He fired again, but the weapon began to heat up, its surface glowing faintly. It's overheating, he shouted. Naya glanced up, her expression tense. Just a few more seconds. The intruders advanced, their movements relentless. Sam's hands shook as he fired the last effective shot. The weapon hissed, then fell silent, its power drained. Desperation clawed at him as the creatures closed in. And then, just as the first intruder reached him, a blinding light filled the room. The metallic sphere in Naya's hands erupted in a pulse of energy, sending the attackers reeling. They staggered, their forms flickering before they retreated into the shadows. Naya exhaled, her shoulders sagging. The signal is sent, she said. Reinforcements are on their way. Sam collapsed onto the couch, his heart racing. Let's hope they get here fast. Naya nodded, her gaze fixed on the window. They'll be here. But until then, we're not out of danger. The hum outside grew louder again, a chilling reminder that the battle was far from over. Reinforcements and revelations? The oppressive silence that followed the energy pulse was deafening. Sam sat on the couch, his hands still trembling as the weight of the moment bore down on him. Naya moved quickly to secure the metallic sphere, her fingers dancing over its surface with a grace that spoke of years of training. The soft hum of the communicator resonated in the room, its pulsating light the only indication that her distress signal had been sent. How long until your people arrive? Sam asked, his voice strained from the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Minutes, maybe less, Naya replied, her eyes never leaving the window. But the hostiles won't give us that much time. They'll regroup and attack again. Sam swallowed hard. He glanced at the alien weapon in his hand, its surface still warm from overuse. What happens if they get in before help arrives? Naya hesitated, her gaze flickering toward him. We make sure they don't take us alive. The gravity of her words hit Sam like a punch to the gut. He had spent his life avoiding confrontation, retreating to the quiet of the woods to escape the chaos of the world. Now, he was standing on the front lines of a conflict he barely understood, with an alien woman relying on him for survival. The thought was interrupted by a faint noise outside. It was subtle at first, like the rustling of leaves, but it grew steadily louder. Sam stood, his grip tightening on the alien weapon. They're coming. Naya nodded, her expression hardening. She moved to the center of the room, where she knelt and placed her hands flat on the floor. A ripple of light spread out from her fingertips, crawling across the cabin like water. Sam stared as the light formed intricate patterns on the floor and walls, glowing faintly before fading into the wood. "What was that?" he asked. "A defense lattice," Naya explained, standing. "It's primitive, but it will slow them down. We just need to hold out until my people arrive." Before Sam could respond, the first attack came. A deafening crash shattered the front window as one of the shadowy figures leapt through, its red eyes blazing. The creature hit the floor and sprang toward Sam with inhuman speed. Sam fired instinctively. The weapon hummed, and a beam of light struck the creature mid-leap. It crumpled to the ground, its form flickering before disintegrating into a cloud of black mist. But there was no time to celebrate, the crash had drawn more attackers. The cabin shook as several figures slammed against the door, their guttural voices filling the air. "Sam, cover the window!" Naya shouted, moving toward the door. She retrieved a second weapon from her belt and began firing through the cracks in the wood, her aim precise and unyielding. Each shot sent a ripple of energy through the air, driving the attackers back. Sam moved to the shattered window, his heart pounding. Outside, he could see dozens of the shadowy creatures converging on the cabin, their movements eerily coordinated. He fired again and again, each shot buying them precious seconds. The weapon in his hand grew heavier, the heat radiating from its surface almost unbearable. "They're overwhelming us," he yelled. Naya didn't respond. Her focus was unshakable as she fought to hold the door. But even her advanced weaponry couldn't keep the attackers at bay forever. The defense lattice she had activated flickered as the creatures pressed against it, their forms distorting as they tested its limits. Just as the first cracks began to appear in the lattice, a brilliant light illuminated the sky. Sam shielded his eyes, squinting through the window as a massive ship descended from the heavens. Its sleek, silver design was unmistakably alien, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. The ship emitted a low hum, its sheer presence radiating authority. "They're here," Naya said, her voice filled with relief. The attackers hesitated, their red eyes darting toward the ship. A beam of light shot down from the vessel, striking the ground with a thunderous impact. The shadowy creatures recoiled, their forms flickering wildly before retreating into the forest. The ship's beam shifted, creating a shimmering column of energy. Moments later, several figures stepped through. They were humanoid, like Naya, their silvery skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Their movements were fluid and deliberate, and each carried a weapon similar to Naya's, though far more advanced. One of the figures, taller and more commanding than the others, approached the cabin. His gaze swept over the scene before settling on Naya. "Are you unharmed?" he asked, his voice resonant and calm. Naya nodded. "I'm fine, thanks to him." She gestured toward Sam, who was still gripping the alien weapon, his knuckles white. The tall figure turned to Sam, his expression softening. "You have my gratitude, human. Your bravery has saved not only Naya but perhaps your entire world." Sam blinked, the weight of the statement sinking in. "I just did what I had to." The figure inclined his head. "Sometimes, that is all that is required." Behind him, the other aliens worked quickly to secure the area. They set up glowing barriers around the cabin, ensuring no hostile forces could return. Naya stepped forward, her eyes meeting Sam's. "You saved my life," she said softly. "I won't forget that." Sam felt a lump form in his throat. "What happens now?" "My people will ensure your world remains safe," she said. "The attackers won't be able to return." The tall figure stepped forward again. "Naya, we must go. The council will want a full report." Naya nodded but hesitated. She turned back to Sam, a flicker of emotion crossing her face. "You've shown me something rare," she said. "Courage, compassion, humanity. Never lose that." Before Sam could respond, she pressed a small device into his hand. It was a sleek, silver disc, no larger than a coin. "If you ever need us," she said, "this will call me." With that, she joined her people, stepping into the beam of light. Sam watched as the aliens were lifted back into their ship. The vessel rose into the sky, its brilliance fading into the stars. The forest grew quiet once more. Sam stood in the clearing, the small silver disc warm in his hand. The night had changed him in ways he couldn't yet fully grasp. Somewhere out there, among the infinite expanse of stars, Naya and her people were continuing their fight. And here on Earth, Sam felt something he hadn't in years, a sense of purpose. Secrets of the Silver Disc. The forest was silent once more, but for Sam Carter, the night was far from over. He stood in the clearing, staring at the small, silvery disc in his hand. It felt warm against his skin, its surface smooth and impossibly sleek, as though it had been crafted from liquid light. The faint hum it emitted seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, a reminder that his life had changed irrevocably. He turned back toward his cabin, his mind racing. The silence of the woods, once a source of comfort, now felt charged with unseen tension. Every shadow seemed to move, every rustle of leaves felt like an echo of the attackers retreating into the dark. Sam clutched the disc tightly as he stepped inside, locking the door behind him. The cabin bore the scars of the battle. The shattered window, splintered wood, and scorch marks on the floor told a story that would be impossible to explain to anyone else. Yet despite the chaos, Sam felt a strange sense of clarity. He had faced something extraordinary, and though he had been terrified, he had survived. More than that, he had made a difference. He set the disc down on his cluttered work table, pulling a chair closer to inspect it. The light it emitted was subtle, barely visible, but when he looked closer, he could see faint patterns moving across its surface, lines and symbols that seemed alive, shifting and rearranging like a puzzle with no edges. "What are you?" he murmured, running a finger along its edge. The disc responded. A soft vibration ran through it, and the symbols brightened. Sam recoiled slightly but leaned back in, his curiosity overcoming his caution. Suddenly, a beam of light shot up from the center of the disc, forming a holographic display that hovered inches above the table. Sam's breath caught. The projection showed a detailed map of the stars, constellations shifting as the view zoomed in and out. It was a window to the universe, far beyond anything he had ever seen. But what caught his attention was a blinking point of light near the edge of the map. It pulsed steadily, its position marked by alien script that Sam couldn't read. The disc seemed to sense his confusion. The holographic text shifted, rearranging itself until it displayed something in English. Emergency beacon activated. Location, Lyraxis Quadrant. Sam frowned. Lyraxis. Naya's home. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. The disc wasn't just a token of gratitude, it was a lifeline, a direct connection to Naya and her people. But why had she given it to him? Surely, she could have called for help on her own. The weight of her parting words returned to him, "If you ever need us, this will call me." Did she foresee that he might need their help again? Or was there something more she hadn't told him? Sam leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Exhaustion pulled at him, but his mind refused to rest. The events of the night replayed in his head. The attackers, Naya's courage, and the reinforcements that had come in the nick of time. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Suddenly, the disc emitted a soft chime. The holographic map shifted, zooming in on Earth. A new symbol appeared, pulsing red near his location. Sam's stomach tightened. It was an alert, though its meaning wasn't immediately clear. The text shifted again, translating itself for him. Disturbance detected. Anomaly near perimeter. He shot to his feet, heart racing. Grabbing the alien weapon Naya had left behind, he moved cautiously to the window. The forest outside was bathed in moonlight, still and quiet. But the disc's warning couldn't be ignored. Something was out there. Not again, he muttered under his breath. The air felt heavier as he stepped outside, the weapon held tightly in his hand. He scanned the tree line, his eyes straining to catch any movement. The disc, still on the worktable inside, continued to pulse, its hum faintly audible even through the cabin's walls. Then he saw it, a faint glow in the distance, deep within the woods. It wasn't like the attacker's eerie red lights or the silvery glow of Naya's people. This light was green, soft and ethereal, flickering like a firefly caught in the breeze. Sam hesitated. Every instinct told him to retreat, to wait for dawn and let the disk's alert fade into nothing. But a deeper part of him, the part that had opened the door to Naya in the first place, drove him forward. Whatever was out there, he needed to know. The forest seemed alive as he moved through it, each step accompanied by the crunch of leaves and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. The green glow grew brighter, drawing him deeper into the woods. When he finally reached its source, he stopped in his tracks, his breath catching. In a small clearing, surrounded by broken branches and scorched earth, stood an object unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was a pod, sleek and metallic, its surface covered in the same shifting patterns as Naya's disk. The green light emanated from a crack in its side, where the metal seemed to have been forced apart. Sam approached cautiously, his weapon raised. The pod hummed faintly, its edges glowing as if alive. He could feel the heat radiating from it, even from several feet away. Whatever this was, it wasn't from Earth. Then, a soft, pained groan. Sam's eyes widened as he circled the pod, his heart pounding. On the other side, half hidden by debris, lay another figure. It was humanoid but distinctly alien, with dark, bronze-colored skin that shimmered faintly in the light. Its chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, and its hand clutched a wound similar to the one Naya had suffered. "Hey," Sam called out, lowering the weapon slightly. "Can you hear me?" The figure's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that glowed a piercing gold. It tried to speak, but the words came out garbled, its voice weak and strained. Sam knelt beside it, unsure of what to do. "Hold on," he said, pulling the small medkit Naya had left from his pocket. He activated it, mimicking the steps she had shown him. A beam of light enveloped the wound, slowly knitting the torn flesh together. The figure winced but didn't resist. As the medkit worked, the figure's breathing steadied. Its golden eyes locked onto Sam's, a mixture of confusion and gratitude flickering in their depths. "Who are you?" Sam asked softly. The figure hesitated before answering, its voice barely above a whisper. "Not alone. They follow." Sam's stomach dropped. He glanced around the clearing, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound. The figure's warning echoed in his mind. The night wasn't over. Not yet. A second encounter. Sam knelt beside the wounded alien, his heart pounding like a drum in the silence of the clearing. The figure's golden eyes flickered weakly, their glow dimming and brightening like a dying ember. The medkit hummed softly in his hands, its beam of light continuing to close the alien's wounds. But the cryptic warning echoed in his mind, chilling him to his core, "Not alone. They follow." "What do you mean? Who's following?" Sam pressed, keeping his voice low. The alien struggled to speak, its voice rasping through labored breaths. "Hunters. They track survivors." "Hunters?" Sam repeated, glancing nervously at the surrounding forest. The shadows seemed to stretch and shift, as though the woods themselves were alive and watching. The alien nodded weakly, its movements sluggish. "Beacon brought them. They never stop." Sam's pulse quickened. He glanced back in the direction of his cabin, where Naya's disk still pulsed faintly on the table. It had alerted him to this pod's arrival, but if the alien was right, it had also alerted something else, something far more dangerous. "Can you move?" Sam asked, his voice firm but urgent. "We can't stay here." The alien's gaze dropped to its side, where the medkit's beam was finishing its work. It took a deep, shuddering breath before nodding slightly. "I can try." With surprising strength, the alien pushed itself into a sitting position. Sam grabbed its arm, steadying it as it rose shakily to its feet. Up close, the alien was taller than he'd realized, its frame lean but powerful. Its bronze skin shimmered faintly under the green light of the pod, giving it an otherworldly presence that made Sam feel small in comparison. "We have to get to my cabin," Sam said, glancing nervously at the tree lean. "You'll be safe there." The alien shook its head. "No, they will find us. Need to destroy the beacon." Sam frowned, his mind racing. The beacon? You mean the disk? The alien's golden eyes locked onto his, a flicker of urgency in their depths. Yes. Signal, draws them. Sam's stomach dropped. Naya had given him the disk to call for help, but it had also acted as a homing beacon for these so-called hunters. If they didn't destroy it, the danger wouldn't stop, it would keep coming, wave after wave, until there was nothing left. We can't just destroy it, Sam said, his voice laced with frustration. Naya's people are counting on it. If we break the connection, we'll lose their support. The alien's expression softened, its gaze steady. Naya's people, close. But hunters, closer. Choose, quickly. The weight of the decision bore down on Sam. He looked at the alien, then at the glowing pod. A faint hum in the distance sent a chill down his spine, growing louder with each passing second. There was no more time to deliberate. Fine, Sam said, his jaw tightening. We'll destroy the beacon. But first, we need to make sure you're strong enough to move. The alien nodded, its posture straightening slightly. I will manage. Sam helped the alien away from the pod, supporting its weight as they moved through the woods. The glow of the pod faded behind them, swallowed by the darkness. Each step felt heavier than the last, the air thick with tension. Sam couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. What are these hunters? Sam asked as they moved. Why are they after you? The alien hesitated, its expression darkening. Rivals, scavengers. They take technology. Destroy worlds. The simplicity of the explanation sent a chill through Sam. These weren't just enemies, they were destroyers, parasites preying on the remnants of civilizations like Naya's. And now, they had set their sights on Earth. As they approached the cabin, Sam caught sight of the faint glow of Naya's disk through the window. It pulsed steadily, its rhythm almost hypnotic. But the closer they got, the louder the hum in the air became, a low, resonant sound that seemed to vibrate in his chest. They're coming, the alien said, its voice strained. Sam glanced over his shoulder, his stomach nodding at what he saw. Shadows moved through the trees, barely visible but unmistakable. The hunters were closing in. We need to hurry, Sam said, quickening his pace. They reached the cabin just as the first of the hunters emerged from the tree line. The creatures were tall and humanoid, but their forms were warped, their limbs too long and their movements unnaturally fluid. Their eyes glowed a piercing red, cutting through the darkness like lasers. Sam shoved the door open and guided the alien inside, slamming it shut behind them. He grabbed the alien weapon Naya had left and positioned himself by the window, his heart pounding. The alien moved to the table, its golden eyes fixed on the disk. Need, disrupt signal, it said, its voice shaky but resolute. Sam nodded, keeping his eyes on the window. Do it! The alien's hands moved deftly over the disk, its fingers manipulating the shifting symbols on its surface. The pulsing light grew brighter, its rhythm faster, as if the disk were resisting. Outside, the hunters closed in, their guttural voices growing louder. Hurry! Sam shouted, firing the weapon at the nearest hunter. The beam of light struck its target, but the creature barely flinched, its form flickering before solidifying again. The alien worked frantically, its hands blurring as it pressed and twisted the disk's surface. Finally, with a sharp crack, the disk emitted a blinding flash of light. The sound of the hum ceased abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence. For a moment, everything was still. The hunters froze, their red eyes flickering. Then, one by one, they began to dissolve, their forms disintegrating into black mist. Within seconds, they were gone. Sam lowered the weapon, his breathing ragged. Did we stop them? The alien nodded, though its expression was grim. For now. Sam slumped against the wall, exhaustion washing over him. The alien placed the now dormant disk on the table, its glow completely extinguished. What happens now? Sam asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The alien met his gaze, a flicker of gratitude in its golden eyes. Now, you prepare. They will come again. Sam's heart sank. He had hoped for a resolution, a sense of closure. Instead, he was left with the weight of an ongoing battle, one he hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. The alien placed a hand on his shoulder, its touch surprisingly gentle. "You are stronger than you think." Sam nodded slowly, the words sinking in. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on. He had no choice. The night wasn't over. Not yet.